Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gordon O'Brien. I'm from a university in South Africa called the University of Mpumlanga. It is really exciting that we have this wonderful opportunity to contribute to World Fish Migration Day events on this 24th of October 2020. This is a pre-recording. We have recorded this morning, and the reason being is because a lot of the guys, stakeholders who you're going to hear from this morning are busy doing things related to World Fish Migration Day this morning. So a great opportunity for us to get together and to celebrate World Fish Migration Day, which is something that is not only important for the fish themselves, but for the people who depend on these ecosystems. We have in South Africa, which is the focus of this hour, we have a huge diversity of species that are distributed across South Africa. And we have many vulnerable African communities throughout the region as well, who are totally dependent on these fish stocks, these fish communities. So it is very exciting that we can celebrate them today, and we can talk about what we're doing, and we can start to think about how we could contribute to the protection of these fishes, and as a result, try and improve the livelihoods of those people who depend on these fishes. So we're talking about healthy fish, we're talking about healthy rivers, and importantly, we're talking about healthy communities. Just to give you an idea of what we're going to do today, we're going to start with a quick introduction to Annelies Volmerans, who's from the Still Bay Tourism Board, and she has a very exciting little awareness project that she's been running in the Cape and in South Africa. And from there, we're going to move on to some biologists, some ecologists who are working on eels and their migrations and using eels or establish them as indicated species. That's going to be Celine Hansen, who's based at the University of Kwazulu Natal. We're going to speak to Professor Victor Weppener, who's based at the Northwest University, and some of the work that they've been involved with. Mathew Burnett, who's also at the University of Kwazulu Natal, and he's been involved in some behavioral ecology research, looking at migratory species as well. A lot of work that he's been doing on yellowfish, which is one of our important indicator cyprinids in the region. We're then going to have a quick chat to some conservationists from the Kruger National Park, Robin and hopefully Dr. Eddie Riddell. And that'll give you an idea of not only what's going on in our region, but some opportunities that we have to contribute to these species and how they're doing in the region. So I'm quickly just hopefully going to get an opportunity for Annelies to join us. I'm just trying to see quickly if she's been able to come on here. And she should be joining us in a few seconds. So again, just to give you an idea of who I am. So my name is Gordon O'Brien. I am a researcher at the University of Mpumlanga, based in the Lowveld eastern region of South Africa, and with Robin Peterson, who's also in the region from the Kruger National Park. We are facilitating and trying to build on the African swimwear program. We're both based in South Africa, but we have been doing work across the region, especially in Africa, with some of the work that I've been doing. Annelies is here, so we're just going to bring her in and have a quick chat and a quick introduction to Annelies. Okay, fantastic. Annelies, can you hear me? She's busy just logging in. So exciting to be able to link all of these different activities together today. This is something that we don't get to do very often. Okay, let me give you a bit of a background. Annelies is located in the Eastern Cape province, or the Western Cape province actually, of South Africa, right on the south coast. And she is located in a small resort town called Still Bay. And there are some rivers that tributaries and some rivers that enter the sea around her area. And there's some interesting opportunities for them there to work with some eels, in particular, some of our willets. Annelies, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now? Just to make sure everything's loud and clear. Hello? There
Yes, yes.
Great, fantastic. So welcome, Annelies. Thank you for joining me this morning, although this will be presented this afternoon. And a quick hi and hope that you have a successful day today. Just give us a quick idea of what you're planning to do this morning.
We're expecting a few people because it's school. Yeah, we're expecting a few people. We're obviously a holiday town. Yeah, and we try and educate, as in always, educate people regarding eels, eel conservation, and then the migratory patterns of these fish, and the importance of keeping the rivers accessible to these species.
Great, fantastic. So you have got, you work at what is in Afrikaans known as the Palengat, which in English is the eel hole. And how long has it been, have eels been using the hole, or have people been aware that eels have been using that area and that you guys have been trying to showcase eels in that area? How long has the Tourism Bureau been busy?
During the lockdown, obviously not that busy, but since people have moved out, we've been as busy as ever. But there's been eels in this fountain for more than 150 years. I have people that come here that are 90 years old that used to come and feed the eels when they were 5, 6 years old, hand-fed. So it's really an amazing story of what our eels is all about here in Stilbaai.
Okay, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. So thanks very much. A quick hi, and hope you have a good little session this morning. And then hopefully we'll be able to then come back to you a bit later and then show what you've been able to do. So good luck, enjoy, and yeah, we'll chat to you a little bit later. Thank you, Annelies.
Thank you, Gordon. Enjoy.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much. Okay, bye. Great. So that's a quick hi to Annelies. We're now going to move over to Celine Hansen, who is a researcher. Is it Celine next? Yes, it is. So Celine, I'll give you a quick idea of who Celine is. And she is a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Kwazulu Natal. And for her PhD, she's been working on eel migrations and aspects of the biology and ecology of eels in Southern Africa. In particular, we have 4 species of anguillids, but I'll let Celine give an idea of what she's been doing. I'll just wait a few moments until she can come in. Fantastic. What I think I'm going to do while we're waiting for Celine is I'm just going to give you my overview of what we're doing in the region. So this is a quick presentation. It'll take a few minutes. I'd just like to highlight that, as I mentioned before, that Robin Peterson from the Kruger National Park is a co-author of all of this work that we're busy with. And we're really trying to support and encourage knowledge of and the management of river connectivity and the migratory species who need those connected rivers and the people who depend on those ecosystems. We're based in South Africa, and the emphasis of this session is South Africa, but just to give you an idea that we have an incredible diversity of landscapes. This is just a quick snapshot just to highlight what are the type of ecoregions that we have in Southern Africa, and they truly are amazing. Let me just show you this picture of some of the communities who are undertaking some subsistence fisheries harvesting activities. And it really is very special. We live in a beautiful part of the world, and I want to encourage all of you to come and visit us. But as development grows and population pressures increase and dependence on resources increase, you can see that we start to have a lot of multiple stresses that start to affect the well-being of these ecosystems. So these are just snapshots again of what type of activities and what type of stresses are occurring in different parts of our country. And you know, one thing that we've been dealing with over the last few years is climate change, and we really are expected to see some drastic changes in our region. So understanding the resilience of the environment and how people depend on the environment is very important to us, so that we can ensure that we are going to be able to maintain those resources that people primarily are totally dependent on. And that links us to migratory fish, because that has an important part to play. So what I'm going to highlight here is the work that we're involved with in the Lowveld region of South Africa. So this is a map of the Limpopo Basin in South Africa, includes the Olifants River that becomes the Elefantes River and goes into Mozambique, into the Limpopo catchment, right down into the Indian Ocean. and this is the border between Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and South Africa. Historically, there were there existed historical connection between the Zambezi and before that the Congo basins. So we have a plethora, a high diversity of species that are similar to those that are found in the Zambezi and the Congo basin. So we have extremely high diversity of fishes here, and this does represent the southern tip of the distribution of many of these species. We have some temperate species that occur in the upper parts of the catchment of our rivers ecosystem, and this is just an indication of their reach scale movement patterns. We have many species that prefer these larger tributaries, the main stems of many of the rivers, and their migration, their connectivity requirements within these rivers as well. And you can see the eels here and the tigerfish and the yellowfish in particular. Those are our indicated charismatic fishes. Here is a youngster from one of our local communities who is actually well aware of when the migrations occur, and they take full advantage of these migrations, and that does contribute to their livelihoods. And many of these species, especially some of the cyprinids, as well as in this case some siluriforms, some of these fishes that we have that utilize these seasonal rivers when they are flowing, and that's a very important part of the life histories and the life cycles and the maintenance of the condition of the populations of some of these species, because they get access into some of these tributaries where they can then breed, and those those offspring can then grow in those tributaries and come back and contribute to the main populations in the catchment. Okay, these are some of the important low-felt, more tropical species that occur within the basin, and they're really good indicators for us. And unfortunately, though, we know that there have been major stresses affecting the movement, the distributions, the opportunity for movement of these species, as well as multiple stresses, water quality drivers throughout South Africa in particular, and then excessive water use resulting in the Limpopo mainstem and many of these tributaries being permanently dry and only flowing during flood events, which is something that's abnormal. Yeah, and although we're trying to improve some of the way that we're managing these rivers and try and understand what requirements some of these species have, and I've got this just to show you in the Kruger Park what we're trying to do with stakeholders to try and remove some of these important barriers to start to open up some of these river reaches for many of these species, especially in the refuge areas. The real question is how are they doing? How are these species doing? And what can we do to contribute not only to the well-being of these species, but also the people who depend on them? And today we have many indicator species who are now locally threatened or protected and or have red list status, but we know that the population trends, the abundances and the distribution of many species in the region is deteriorating, is declining. So there is a lot to do. And what we're ultimately really interested in is trying to support some of these communities and their access to these resources, and try and support and promote these resources so that the resources can be resilient and the communities can be resilient, especially during all of these uncertain times where there's so many things that are changing. I think that's my quick introduction for the moment, for the time being. And I think Celine is just about ready to join us. So we're going to move over to Celine in a second. Great, guys. Thanks very much. Celine is with us now. And I'd like to introduce you. This is Dr. Celine Hansen. It's pretty special because she's just attained her PhD, so well done. And working on anguillid eels in the region. Well, thanks, Celine. I just have a couple of questions quickly, but the first is, just tell us quickly about your experiences with working with eels in South Africa in particular, and what you've generally observed about how they're doing and what people should be doing about eels in the region.
So working with eels, freshwater eels in South Africa has been quite a bit of a challenge because they're quite tricky to catch. No one knows anything about them, where to catch them, how, when. So it's been very tricky, but it's been an interesting work. We've been looking at their spatial ecology, looking at distribution and behavior, specifically in KwaZulu Natal, but in all South Africa as well. And yeah, in terms of distribution, we have seen a decline in their distribution, up to 50% for our endemic species, which is the longfin eel Anguilla mozambica. And these results have been used by IUCN to upgrade that species from least concerned to near threatened last year. So it's not really looking good for them, for these species, but we're really busy to care for them. And we keep going on looking at their spatial ecology, migratory ecology, and we've extended our study area from South Africa all the way to Kenya, and we're also looking at working in the isles of the Western Indian Ocean region.
Wow, it really is, and I know, and I've been seeing how this work has been growing and developing around you, Celine, is very special. So it's really exciting for us to have someone who's going into this space and contributing to the work that's been done in the world on eels. Another quick question is, there are many things causing the decline in not only distributions, but the state of populations. What have you found? Just talk a little bit about what are those stresses causing these eels to not be able to migrate anymore, or what's affecting the populations in the region?
So we've looked at the distribution at regional and catchment scale to look at what actually drive their distribution, what drive their presence. And we specifically looked at Anguilla mozambica, the endemic species. And we saw that two very important things were the presence of dams. So if there's one dam maybe in your system, they might be able to get in. But if you keep having successive dams, that's where the problem is, especially on main stem of rivers, because they used to be quite far up in the catchment. We have the Tugela River, which is about 500 kilometers long, and they used to be found right at the top, but not anymore. So if you keep having successive barriers, even if they're small, they're gonna take more time to get up the catchment, meaning they're gonna grow too big to pass obstacles they used to pass quite easily when they were small. So when they're less than 15 centimeters, it's quite easy for them to go up. Impressive obstacle. We have a big waterfall here, the Howick Fall, which is 100 meters high, and they used to pass it easily, and now we can't find them really upstream of that obstacle, because before that waterfall there's now 3 or 4 major dams. So upper reach of our rivers are actually not really accessible to angolids anymore.
Yeah, and you know what I always talk about, and I'm sure it's the same for you, that these charismatic dynamic fishes are in rivers that are out of sight. So people don't see them a lot, and people don't know what's happening because they don't see them so much. But how do you think we can contribute to that problem? How do you think we can get this story out there and into the minds of the people who are building dams, who aren't building fishways? I know that there are very few fishways in our country, but what do you think we can do to try and, speak? Who can speak for the eels, and how do we do that?
Well, I think we're the only ones speaking for the eels, and we've been quite busy talking to the people, having public talks. We're quite active on social medias as well. I don't think that's enough, and I don't really have a solution, but yeah, it's all about getting the people involved and getting them to care. And where we work at the moment in Tugela Mouth, the fact that we're around, people actually come and talk to us and actually start to understand that what's the problem and what's the impact for them if we don't manage our river well. It's not just about the fish, it's all about human well-being and health as well, because they all depend on rivers and their health for drinking water, for instance.
No, I'm with you. And then Celine, just, your contribution to this space has really been very special with your book chapter and all of your publications. We really have a much better understanding of these fishes. And I encourage you, keep going. It's World Fish Migration Day today, and you are on your way into the field to go and work on some eels. So give us a quick last idea of what you're doing right now.
So in about 2 minutes, when we're done talking, we're on our way to Tugela Mouth, which is a river mouth in Kwazulu Natal. We are looking for baby eels coming in the rivers, but we're also looking for adult eels going back into the ocean to breed. It's about 2-hour drive from where I am in Maritzburg. It's over 30 degrees today. So it's going to be 6 nights of catching eel every morning and every afternoon, and looking for them, taking measurement and trying to understand when, how, and they get into our river, and how they get out to breed and keep going on their life cycle.
Fantastic. And for the people who are going to be watching this, can you just give them an idea of what social platforms they can monitor your work on, especially this trip, and please post pictures so that we can see what's going on. So where can they follow you? How can they follow you?
So we do have a Facebook account for our entire research team. We have aquatic research going on in UKZN and UMP, and we have a Facebook page. It is aer.ukzn. You'll find us quite easily. And we're also on Twitter, quite active on Twitter. We publish photos every time we go on the field, and we're called Eels Masma. So Eels, and Masma is M-A-S-M-A.
Fantastic.
So you can follow up, and we're quite active, and we're happy to answer any question as well.
Great, thank you, Celine. And yeah, we'll definitely put some of the links up later on, just so that people can get access to that. Enjoy your trip, and thank you for your time. Appreciate that.
Thanks. Good luck. Cheers.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Bye. Thanks very much.
So you know where I am, Gordon? I'm at Mabula in
Mabula. That's fantastic. Are you on a field trip? What are you guys?
No. We're here for the weekend with the kids and their other halves.
Fantastic. Enjoy. So everybody, thank you again. This is Professor Victor Weppener, and Professor Weppener is from the Northwest University in South Africa. Yeah,
have you started again, Gordy?
So there's a few of us who are on today. So excuse me for that. But Professor Weppener has been involved in ecotoxicology and fisheries and fish and ecology research in South Africa since the early 90s. So it's really good to have you on today as well, Prof. Weppener, and thank you for your time. So if you can just give us an idea about the work that you've been involved with fish migration in particular, and understanding the stresses that are affecting these important indicator species in South Africa. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity, Gordon. We've been fortunate enough that for the past 10 years, we've been working on the same system, and I think it's a luxury that very few people have, to be able to do a decade's worth of work on a system which is regarded as being the most biodiverse in terms of fish diversity in South Africa, and that's the Lower Pongola River and floodplain system. Now, the Lower Pongola River is reliant on annual floods to inundate associated depressions. We call in South Africa, we call them pans. So they're not permanent water bodies, but they are temporary water bodies. But the local communities are reliant on these water bodies for both drinking water as well as a source of protein, because during the annual floodings, you get the migration of fish from the river into these depressions. And because these depressions are very nutrient rich, so it's not pollutant nutrient, it's just natural vegetation and nutrients that come into these systems. They are extremely effective in acting as a breeding ground and a nursery ground for a lot of the riverine fish species. And as these depressions start drying out, the connection with the river starts getting lost, and so the fish would start migrating back to the river before they are cut off from the river. Now, for the past 6 years, there's been what is called a green drought in that region. So there's enough water to sustain plant growth, but there's not enough water to cause floods of the flood into the floodplain system. For 6 years, yes, that's right. So for the past 6 years, there's been no flood in the region, and because there's a large dam, a large impoundment upstream, which used to release water to simulate the floods, these flood releases have also not taken place. So essentially, it's it's a question of which of these species are still present in the river system, and which of the species are reliant on these flood queues, whether they be large-scale floods, which are upwards of 80 cubic meters per second, or whether they are relatively small ones, which are between 8 and 10 cumecs. And a lot of the work that we've been doing is to determine whether there are species that are able to move into these depressions when they are connected during the small localized flooding periods. And there are a few of these pans that still have the connection with the river during the localized flooding periods. And to see which species actually migrate in, what are their queues. And as you're probably aware, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of biological or ecological information on most of our species. A lot of it is anecdotal. You hear from fishermen when they see the fish start moving. And what we're trying to do is in a scientific way, using a combination of field-based studies, but also lab-based studies, to look at what are the swimming requirements in the first place for fish. So when do they start migrating? What would the water velocity need to be to get these fish to start moving? And essentially, that's the work that we've been doing on this system.
It's fantastic, and I'm well aware of the work that you've been doing, especially in the earlier years. I think it's really special to see what's coming out of the work. Something I think that's been happening today is we're getting this theme of these fishes and the systems that they live in are out of sight and generally out of mind. Do you think, and this is a bit of a loaded question, that, you know, in South Africa, we have good legislation. We do have, we have legislation that does foresee for these ecosystem requirements, but we're not so good at having implemented it. So have you found in the Pongola area, which is our largest floodplain system, and the people who depend on that system, the population, I know, is just increasing and increasing and increasing. So what have you found with the way that the system is being managed, and whether or not these declining resources due to this drought and other upstream impacts, where's this going? What's going to happen if it continues? And importantly, if people need to depend more on these systems again, what do you think is going to happen? And we have government grants in South Africa that keeps the communities going. It gives them like a minimal amount to buy food. But if they don't get that grant, and now you have all these people surrounding the floodplain, is it a bit of a hot pot?
Yeah. So what you're saying about the grants is very true. Where in probably the 1970s, 1980s, this was a traditional fishing community where they used to do communal fishing with fishing baskets. Now in the 2020s, you find that the fish is the third most important source of protein, where it used to be the number one source. And you're quite right. It's the government grants that are now moving people away from perhaps utilizing the fish as a source of protein. And that's perhaps taken away the sort of the focus on the importance of fish in that system. So where the importance in the system now lies is in getting water for irrigation. So people in the local communities aren't that much concerned with are the fish going to get enough water. What they're more concerned of, are we getting enough water that we can pump out immediately? So there's large-scale irrigation schemes going on, and irrespective of the legislation, there's water abstraction, which is not licensed at all. So there's large-scale water abstraction from the system. Notwithstanding all of these pressures, the fish are still there. They might not be in the same abundances, but I think what we're trying to start looking at is just looking at ecosystem resilience. So because it's a transboundary river, we don't know what the fish potential is like downstream from South Africa into Mozambique. And in all likelihood, in Mozambique, where the population pressure is so much less on the Maputo River, there are large refugia for fish in that area. And look, I think we're very often too much of a rush. We don't think in terms of ecosystem timing, and in all likelihood, you've got a very resilient ecosystem. Probably not in South Africa, but in Mozambique, and those fishes would be there and queued to move the moment you get sufficient flows again. But of course, the other pressures that come with the increasing human population in that region is also massive. So yes, you're going to get an increase in eutrophication taking place, nutrient enrichment. Yes, there's an increase in the use of fertilizers, in the use of pesticides because of the agriculture. Yes, because it's an endemic malaria area, there's still continued anti-vector spray programs on the go. And that's still DDTs and pyrethroids that are sprayed.
Crazy.
So yes, those pressures are there, but I'm fairly confident that
optimistic. Actually, we have opportunities to do something. It's not just all doom and gloom. But I do get the impression that we need to raise the profile of this problem, especially in the context that if we are going to need people to depend on resources more in the future, then we better start preparing for that today.
I agree, and it's a combination of the science, and I don't think that people have completely forgotten that they are reliant on the natural resources as a source of living. So I think that indigenous knowledge, or the memory of what is happening. Yeah, so it's a bit of an institutional memory, if you can call it that, is still there. But
it's good to hear that there are still great opportunities, and that you are trying to bring that science and management interface together, which is really the focus of this part of the webinar workshop. Thank you. Just one last quick question is how can people follow the Water Research Group and what you guys are doing generally? Do you have a website or other social platforms that people can?
Yes, we have a website on the Northwest University's website. So if you go to www.nwu.ac.za and you search for Water Research Group, there is a website. We have a very active Facebook page, and that is NWU_WRG. So just on Facebook, you can search for us as Water Research Group, and we have a Twitter handle as well. So you can follow us on all of those social media.
Fantastic. And this is recorded, and the whole webinar's the activities for the day are going to be recorded as well. So I hope and I'm sure that you'll get some interesting questions. And thank you for the opportunity that we've had to speak to you today, and the broader collaborations we have together. Thank you for all of your efforts in this space. Enjoy your day, and I hope that we get some good positive support out of this process and this in the future.
Thank you very much, Gordon. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good one. Enjoy Mbula.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Good luck for the rest of the day.
Thanks very much.
Ready? Are you recording?
Yeah, so I'm recording now, and this is now Dr. Matthew Burnett. This is another new PhD graduate who we have really been grateful, Matt, for all of your work in fish migration research. So welcome this morning. Again, this is a pre-recording of what we're going to present this afternoon at 2. Dr. Burnett. So just a quick hi, and I'd like an idea from you of what work you've been involved with, especially around Fish Trac, and how Fish Trac can be used to help us understand the biology, ecology, and migratory requirements of indicator migratory fishes in the region. Thanks, Dr. Burnett.
Hi, Gordon. Thanks very much. My name's Matthew, and as you've asked, quite a long, lengthy question. To sum it up, is it's not that easy, but we've been using Fish Trac as a tool here in Southern Africa to firstly help us understand the biology and ecology and spatial as well as temporal movement of fish in river systems. And we've been using that as to look into how we can use the biological processes as indicators to anthropogenic stresses within the river system. Recently, we've applied this in the Mgeni catchment as well as in the Olifants River catchment, and we're finding some interesting stuff by doing this. I think, does that answer your question? There's a lot more.
No, I know, Matt, I know, and sorry for throwing you under the bus a little bit. I think what I'm going to do, Matt, quickly is just to help your discussion is I have one of our pages that I just want you to talk to. So this is the Fish Trac schematic. So can you see it?
Yeah.
So maybe just give us an idea through this schematic what Fish Trac is and how you're using it.
Okay. Yeah, so the Fish Trac program is using smart technology to help us understand the system and use that smart technology to assist in making management decisions using fish as indicator species. So we attach fish with smart tags, which is really just fish telemetry systems. But these fish telemetry systems can work remotely, where we use a series of an established network over the river that can detect the signal of fish and where these fish are within the system. This kind of this information gets sent to a data management system, and the data management system allows us to access the data and the information coming off the fish in real time. And this really helps us be responsive to when the fish is moving, at what time it's moving, and we can then make management decisions based on that particular movement.
What interesting outcomes have you found so far? What have you discovered that's useful from a fish movement or migration perspective in South Africa?
In South Africa, so with yellowfish in particular, we are finding that they are very responsive to changes in flows. And when these flows happen, they're not as mobile initially on the first front of the flow, but as the flow stabilizes, then only do they start to move up into the river system and around into their spawning ground. So that's one thing we found. The other thing we found is that we've been able to use this tool we've been able to use this to detect changes in behavior, and that's been really, really helpful. So we can establish what normal behavior is based on their deal behavior, and then any sudden changes using the activity sensor, we're able to determine when there's a change in behavior and what's the result of that behavior, whether it's flow, whether it's changes in water quality parameters that are affecting that change. And sometimes it's just a cue that's resulting in the fish moving to perform biological processes such as spawning or moving back into refugia habitat.
So you mentioned a moment ago that when with yellowfish, that when the flows were changing, the yellowfish were not moving, but when the flows were stable, whether it's high or low, then they would be into spawning areas or refuge areas or whatever it was. So they don't like it when the flows are changing. Is that how the tool works? That because they're not moving when the flows are changing, it's telling us that there's something wrong and the normal behavior is disrupted in certain events. So we know that lots of changes in flows are bad, but stable flows are good.
Yeah, I think naturally the fish are used to changes in flow, and I think the increase in how we manage these changes in flows is what's really disruptive. So normally you would get a flood event, but your base high flows would be maintained for longer, and the fish would get a shock with the inflow, but enjoy the higher base flow that comes with that sustained high flow later. What we've also realized is that these fish don't necessarily need changes in flow to trigger migration, and sometimes it's more related to seasonal temperature changes. And what the flows do is actually help them access upper catchments, because the higher flows allow for more access to habitat where low flows won't allow that access to habitat. So Fish Trac has really helped us unpack when, what, and how these fish are moving, and how we need to manage our flows, as well as the environment as an entirety, to meet the requirements.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I know, I work with you on some of this, and it really is special stuff. And, good job for all of your outputs, because I know it is contributing to our the knowledge of our migratory fishes and how we're managing these rivers as well. And I know that a lot of this information has changed the way that we look at these systems and manage these systems. So keep at it. Just as a last opportunity, could you tell us what you're busy with at the moment in terms of the research that you're involved with now, and any last shout outs? Celine has already told everybody, because you guys are in the same group, about your Twitter handle and Facebook page and stuff. So I hope that people are aware. Please contact the UKZN AER group for more information. But what are you busy with at the moment? What type of research are you busy with at the moment?
Yeah, so we've got a hand in a couple of projects, and primarily looking at fish and how we can use fish to better manage our water resources. So we're currently looking at the impact of actually alien invasive species on some local indigenous species up in the upper catchment of the Moy. We're also actually investigating the impacts of anthropogenic stresses through like oil spills and industrial use, where they've wiped out subpopulations of fish. And we're looking at how fish movement can attribute to rehabilitating those areas back to abundances that previously were there. So yeah, lots happening, and really trying to work between the space of water resource use, but also doing it sustainably. So yeah, you can do it.
Fantastic. And keep at it, Matt. You're a young researcher, and there's lots of stuff that's going on. I know that some of your work has already contributed to Mgeni and to other regulators and the people who use these resources as well. So hang in there, keep at it, and thank you for your time today, and best of luck with the you're busy with. And hopefully next year you'll be back on World Fish Migration Day. Just by the way, Matthew and I, while I was working with Matthew, have recorded a series of videos on looking at the migration of fishes around the Mgeni, called Doozy Gold. Hey, Matt, Doozy Gold. And
that's right, yes.
So please go give it a, and you'll get more information what type of work he's been involved with, and what interesting issues we know are going on around that area on fish migrations, and the knowledge around the migrations and the people who depend on those migrations. Matt, thanks for your time. Enjoy the day, and this is between 2 and 3. So hope that you get a lot of
good.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Gordon O'Brien.
Cheers, Matt. Thanks, man. Bye.
Bye.